So today's guest is remarkable in so many ways, and I think everyone listening is absolutely going to fall in love with her. Katie Radel owns Ripple Consulting and has a laundry list of impressive career accolades. Truly, your list of like I'm doing my homework, and I'm like, oh my god, like I'm so humbled you're even talking to me. And while her career is totally impressive, this is a podcast about death and dying, which is also why you're here. You have a totally unusual backstory, in my opinion, that I think listeners are going to find absolutely fascinating. And I can't wait to dig into it all. Katie, welcome to the Dying to Know More podcast.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here, and I've so enjoyed getting to know you.
Likewise. So we were introduced by a mutual friend, Alice Sullivan, who I interviewed on a previous episode. She suggested when we wrapped up that you might be a fantastic person to have on the podcast because you grew up in a funeral home, which is fascinating. So let's just dive in feet first. What was that like?
Sure. Well, to back up a little bit, to back up a lot, it's third generation funeral home.
Okay.
So great grandfather started it years and years, many years ago. And I grew up in that environment, meaning, we would visit when we were very little, visit dad at work. And then when I got a little older, when I was 16, I actually moved above the funeral home.
Okay.
A lot of the older funeral homes have, had apartments kind of built in because that's how they were designed so many years ago. And so my brother and I and my dad lived above the funeral home when I was 16. So, it was it was like you entered kind of it's kind of a skinny row house, if you will, row building.
Yeah.
And we would enter the side, and before we would climb up the stairs to go to the apartment, we would always have to go through the office.
Mm-hmm.
And I describe it as like every single day of my life, I would have the reminder of where we lived, because if you've ever been in a funeral home, there's lots of flowers all the time.
Yeah.
And I would always describe it as like it always smelled like coffee and it always smelled like lilies.
Okay.
Unmistakable. And so to this day, when I smell lilies, it kind of brings me back to that time I lived in the funeral home.
But did you have any sort of sense that this was, and I don't want to say unusual because I mean, to be around that sort of setting, but, or was it just kind of built into your DNA, like from day one?
It was absolutely built into the DNA. It was totally normalized as a business. The joke is, well, somebody's got to do it. And it's true. And so my family had been doing that for so long that it truly was ingrained in us that, this is what we do for a living, and we take care of people.
Yeah.
And that is so true. And so when I was 16, and I always tell the story, and I could drive, I had my driver's license, I was driving a hearse, not to school, not as my primary car, but I mean, I was helping out at the funeral home.
Yeah.
And I would work there in the summers. And then when I got to college, I would work there in the summers as well when I came home from college, from school.
Yeah.
And I like to describe it as like I was doing very, very, very odd jobs, like to say the least.
Yeah.
But again, it was totally normalized. And I think even that young, I was looking around me thinking, this is pretty special that we get to have the opportunity to help people on their worst day.
So
really,
cool.
I mean, their worst day.
I think sometimes people look at the funeral home industry as a business, like each place is operating as a business, and maybe have lost sight of that. So to hear you kind of say that your family felt very honored to be able to take care of people, that humanizes it and makes it really special. I can see why that would be special for you.
Absolutely. And just being in those rooms. And when I say being in those rooms, I mean, downstairs was the chapel, and downstairs, visitations would be happening, or funerals would be happening, especially in the evenings, visitations. And I would help with funerals and processions and flowers and, be a part of all of that. And it really was amazing. Now that I look back, like what a cool way to grow up, because I didn't realize how it would have affected my life later.
Yeah.
And boy, did it. It
Well,
it it affected my life much later. I would say in my late 30s, I realized what a gift that was. It wasn't just a family business or a way of kind of growing up in an environment. It taught me how to live better.
explain that.
Sure. So I would say I was in my 30s, early 30s, and unfortunately I was going through a really, really rough patch. Um, things were not good in my first marriage, and I knew it. And so I started thinking, well, this probably isn't what I want forever. And unfortunately, at the same time, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. She was fighting cancer. And I mean, what a terrible time. And
Yeah.
I'll never forget, I got a call. My mom masked how bad it was, I think,
Mm.
to protect me. And I had no idea it had gotten that bad. And I got a call from my aunt one day, and she said, "Hey, your mom was put on hospice. I think you need to come home and say goodbye."
Oh God.
And at the same time, I was contemplating, how am I going to get out of this marriage?
Yeah.
And it was rough. And I went home to be with my mom, be at her bedside, and like what a complete honor that was to be able
Yeah.
to be with her in that room. And I remember thinking at the time after she passed, I was in this tiny little room with her, and there was something that just kind of clicked in my head of, oh my gosh, life is so short,
Mm.
and you are confronted with it actually face to face today. And what does that look like? And how are you going to choose? Because I had this overwhelming sense of responsibility to live better because
Yeah.
I knew she couldn't. And
Yeah.
then I remembered all of those funerals that I had been to and how I grew up. And I'm like, well, they don't have the opportunity to choose and live better and do different. So that's on me.
Yeah.
And not long after that, I came home and I filed for divorce.
Yeah.
And
Had
I
you?
don't recommend it,
Yeah.
but it I think it helped me see the other side and see that life is way too short to be in a situation that isn't serving you well.
Yeah. Had you? First of all, how many funerals do you think you've been to in your life?
Oh gosh, hundreds. It's really
Okay.
hard to tell. I mean, we're going way back to like 16 years old.
Yeah.
Um, and throughout high school, throughout college, living there just like on the weekends, if you
Yeah. Yeah.
will,
Yeah.
and witnessing them from afar.
Yeah.
And I actually lived above the funeral home by myself after I graduated from college.
Okay. So, question
So
on that. Like, just this
sure.
is pure human curiosity.
Hmm.
The thought of that sounds like I grew up in the 80s and watching
Hmm.
Poltergeist and watching, like,
Same.
you know what I mean? And all I picture is that scene from the pool when the storm and the
Oh
bodies
yeah.
coming up.
Right.
Was that, did it, like, were you ever afraid? I mean, or were you just like, you'd been around it for so long? Like, maybe you weren't. I can't imagine living above a funeral home, but
Hmm.
that's what I grew up with.
It was equal parts normalized.
Hmm.
And actually, when you would walk up to that apartment above the funeral home, it was absolutely just old and historic and gorgeous and like a
Yeah.
safe nest, if you will.
Gotcha. Okay.
Beautiful space.
Yeah.
Um, but I will never forget. So this is going back to when I was 16, 17, I guess. I remember very vividly when the movie Sixth Sense came out.
Yes.
I remember on one weekend, I went to the movie theater and saw it with my girlfriends. And then I had to drive home after watching home to the funeral home, drive home after watching that. And I remember
Like,
thinking,
I
this
see
is
dead
it.
people too.
Right. Like, this is it. They're gonna, these spirits are going to knock on my door in the middle of the night and they're going to tell me that, they have a message. and
Oh,
this is it. Like, this has
yeah,
opened some kind of portal.
yeah,
I
yeah,
was, I couldn't sleep for 3 days.
yeah.
But really, other than that, everything
Yeah.
was pretty normalized. And it was just like this gorgeous, very peaceful place to live.
Did your friends ever like
Mhm.
were your friend like was there ever conversation by your friends were they like that's so unusual or cool or what like or was it
You
just
know,
kind of like that's who you are?
looking back, it was like, it was what it was. And it
Yeah.
wasn't a, a novelty, I guess. And it
Yeah.
wasn't super creepy. I mean, I remember, in high school and even after college when I lived there by myself, I would have sleepovers and,
Yeah.
have friends stay the night, and
Yeah.
no one was really that terrified. I think maybe because I was so okay with it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why.
Which I think is kind of
Um,
cool because you're
mhm.
thereby making it not scary for your friends. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I
Right.
don't know. What so thinking back through your hundreds of funerals, what was there one that was like a standout, like
Mm,
most beautiful or the most
mm,
unusual or just
mm.
a standout?
Yes, I told this story the other night, at the event that you and I went to.
Yeah.
It was called Dying to Discuss,
Yeah.
and it was a room of people talking openly about death and grief, and it was amazing. And I told the story the other night. I will never forget. There was a very conservative funeral. A lot of them were,
Yeah.
in Kentucky. So very structured with a pastor, usually in a church. Um, the prayers, the eulogy, all of that. But I will never forget this one funeral. It was seemingly um normal as funerals go, but I
Yeah.
remember the pastor got up, and maybe right after the eulogy, in front of all of these people, he said, "I'd like for the congregation to stand up." And we did. And it was silence because everyone was like, "This is unusual. This is off script.
Yeah.
I would like everyone to give a round of applause for the life that so and so led."
Aw.
And it was simple, but it still sends chills up my
You're giving
arms
me chills.
because
Yeah.
it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And maybe it was off script, and maybe that's what hit me so hard, is that this is going kind of the extra mile to honor this person's life and how they lived.
Yeah.
And I think at that time, it kind of sparked something in me of like, when people say celebration of life, that is an option,
Yeah.
right? And people say that all the time. We're having a celebration of life, and I've been to a lot of celebrations of lives. And frankly, sometimes they're not very celebratory. They're, maybe normal run of the mill funerals, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
But occasionally, I have been to a few that are truly a party, truly a celebration, truly
Yeah.
people laughing and telling stories and loving each other, and you can feel it. You can feel it's very palpable in the room, the
Yeah.
love and the memories and the honoring.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what sparked something in me that day, of like, this can be a little different, the way that we honor people.
Yeah. Well, so that kind of is a good segue to the other kind of topic I want to touch on. I know
Mhm.
that you are you serve on the board for Larkspur Conservation. Tell us about Larkspur, how you got involved, all of that.
Yes. Well, I love to tell this story because it all starts with the Antiques Roadshow. And my
All roads
I
lead
joke,
back to Antiques Road.
all roads lead to Antiques Roadshow. One night, several years ago, maybe 4 years ago or so, my husband and I were watching Antiques Roadshow, and all of a sudden, on comes a preview for what is coming on next, which is a documentary called "Bury Me at Taylor Hollow." And I kind of perk up and I'm like, huh, what's that all about? And we sit there and we watch this documentary. And Bury Me at Taylor Hollow is about an hour long, and it documents the journey of the inception of Larkspur Conservation, which is Middle Tennessee, well, really Tennessee's only nonprofit natural burial
Wow.
organization.
Yeah.
And they also conserve the land, which is amazing. So it kind of follows the founding and how they acquired their first property to do this, and getting permitting and approval and all of that. As you can imagine, it was a lift. But at the end, and I don't think this is a spoiler, and I highly recommend everyone watch it. It's so beautiful. They actually show a real natural burial.
Mm.
And it was done in such a beautiful, serene, intimate way to honor a loved one. It was completely different from anything I'd ever seen or experienced. We are all wearing, jeans and hiking boots, and we're hiking up to this meadow. And when I say meadow, I mean the most beautiful, gorgeous meadow you've ever seen in the middle of Sumner County.
Yeah.
And the family, it's a procession up to this meadow and to the place of burial. And it is flowers and all things nature. And the family is able to really participate in the burial. And it is, to me, the most beautiful, just incredible way to honor someone.
Mm.
Going back to, the preacher I was telling you about, it moved me in a way I can't describe. And when it was over, I was absolutely sobbing on the couch.
Yeah.
And my sweet husband was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not okay. I am not okay. I am going to be involved with them somehow. I don't know what it looks like, but I'm going to do it." So what
Yeah.
I did, I think it was a Tuesday night at 10 o'clock at night, sobbing. I get on Instagram because that's what we do. And I find them. And the wild thing was that I saw a post from, I don't know, maybe about a month before, saying we're doing a call for board of directors. And the deadline was that exact date that I was on Instagram and I had seen the
Meant to
movie.
be.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, the stars are aligning. This is something I have to at least try for. So I applied, and then I wrote this long, probably very rambling, wild email about how I grew up in a funeral home and how I was completely touched and overwhelmed by this organization and how I want to be a part of it. And, oh, I do PR. Do you need help with PR?
Oh,
I was like,
and they're like, heck
I'm,
yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure it read a little desperate and a little strange, but I didn't care at that time. And apparently it worked, because I've been serving on the board ever since.
That is amazing.
Which has been such an incredible honor. And I've met so many wonderful people along the way. And I've been able to have the honor of helping and attending a few natural burials at Larkspur. And every single time I'm like, wow, what a sacred, gorgeous, beautiful place this is.
So it's
not hard to see how it's kind of a complete 180 from a funeral home. So
Sure.
what are and there's room for both. What is it? How does it differ? And what are the things about the burials at Larkspur that move you the most? Or what made you fall in love with this concept?
Sure. I think it was the radical difference.
Mhm.
The thought of returning to the earth
Mhm.
in a natural way. Everything is biodegradable. Even the stones, if you have a stone marker, it comes from, that property. They decorate with these beautiful flowers, and they incorporate nature, and just the entire feeling from start to finish of what it is in the process, and how the family is invited
To join if they feel moved and comfortable is completely different to me and how I grew up. And there's a place for both.
Yeah.
There's a place for both based on
Absolutely.
comfort level. But this was just so completely different to me. And I didn't know that this was a thing. I didn't know it
Yeah.
was even an option. And when I did, I'm like, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah. What's been the most kind of eye-opening or moving or impactful experience you've had since you've been working on that board?
Mm-hmm. I've been able to participate. One time I was asked to volunteer,
Mm-hmm.
and it was so cold that day, and it was very, very, very small, very intimate. And it was the biggest honor to be able to be there and to comfort the family. And I felt like I belonged there. I kind of naturally, like your muscle memory kind of takes over in a way. And I felt like, my experience leading up to this, growing up the way I did and participating in so many funerals like I did, muscle memory kicked in. And I'm like, yes, I can be here and I can be comfortable and I can use my superpower, which is empathy,
Mm-hmm.
in this beautiful way, in nature, surrounded by beauty and the birds and all of that. And it was an honor to be there.
Yeah.
And it happens every time I go.
That's amazing. Is there something that you, if people are I think that the whole notion of these natural burials, it's on the rise. Awareness is on the rise. And there are more and more, I read somewhere today, that's human composting, but there's a cemetery in New York that is the first in the state that is carving out a space for human composting. So, and I know that's different, but I think this kind of alternative that there's room for more options at end of life is kind of on the rise. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
I do. And I am very interested in this movement. I call it a movement, and I call it, and what I've heard a lot before is, from different speakers and influencers I follow, which is a funny thing to say, but there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Death positivity.
Yeah.
Talking more about it, being more aware of your options.
Yeah.
Really going there with what we want at the end of life and having those open conversations. There are death cafes.
Yeah.
There are many, many death doulas. I'm getting to know a lot of them in this community, and it's amazing to me. And it's like, why has it taken us so long? I wish it hasn't, but it is such a positive sign of talking about the thing that is so taboo to talk about, that we refuse to talk about. We've always refused to talk about it.
Yeah.
Culturally, whatever that looks like. You can sense the movement out there.
You totally can.
And it's
100%
incredible to me.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. And it's such I know you and I follow a lot of the same people like on Instagram in this space. And it's just like everybody for the most, there's always a couple of like, whatevers, but for the most part, everybody is all on the same team. It's a lovely community. Everybody's like, rising tides lift all ships kind of thing. Like, and it's just, it's a lovely space that I just, and I've met some amazing people in this space. I just think it's such a magical time and space for this. And it's so weird because we're talking about dying, you know what I mean? But it's like, but we're all going to do it. So.
Right. Yeah. My favorite like opener to make people laugh is, did you know that 100% of people die? And it always makes a laugh. You're like, well, yeah, I guess that is true.
I was going to ask if you growing up in the funeral home, if that's like a icebreaker or a common, like, does that come up? Do you talk about that?
Sure. And when I tell people this is, I always say, when you go to a networking thing and they do an icebreaker and it's like, tell us your fun fact. My fun fact all the time, every single time is, well, I grew up in a funeral home and I used to drive a hearse. And most people laugh.
For listeners, Katie is tiny, pint-sized human. So it's just funny. You picture this massive hearse and massive heavy caskets, and then you're such a badass. You are. Anyway,
And
what's the
that's
response?
kind of the opener. And people, I always watch. I laugh. I laugh a lot. That's just who I am as a person.
Yeah.
But I always, when I say that, or when I tell people about how I grew up, I always observe. And it's a really cool thing, because more and more what is happening is people say, "Oh, that's cool," instead of completely shut down and like walk
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
And that used to be the case.
Interesting.
Because I've been talking about this since, I was very young.
Yeah.
And I remember people just shutting down and getting really awkward. And I get it.
Yeah.
Our society, our culture isn't very kind about talking about death. But
Yeah.
more and more lately, maybe because I own it too, and I'm more vocal about it, I like to welcome it in.
Yeah.
And almost test people of like, are you cool with this? Or like, and when they say
Politics. Let's talk about where we grew up.
right. And when they say, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I know a death doula, or, I'm going to be buried in this cool natural burial space. And I was like, oh, really? And so it's kind of that talking point of being comfortable in sharing conversation about this giant white elephant that it is starting to be smaller.
Yeah.
And I love that.
All right. I have two more questions. First, again, because I'm curious by nature, tell us one little known or unknown either hack or secret or just something that happens behind the scenes in funeral homes. Doesn't have to be salacious, doesn't have to be gross or gory, but
sure,
something that the average person just would not know.
I go to fingernails. I go to fingernails.
All right.
And I can't, I know that's bizarre, but I go to fingernails because, at the end of life, fingernails are the furthest thing from your mind and something that you take care of, right? Usually if someone's an elderly person, fingernails in an open casket are very, it's very thoughtful. It's very thoughtful about making fingernails look presentable and groomed, and a lot of times with nail polish on. And I know that's such a strange thing, but it strikes me as just that little detail that brings us back to what it was like to be living.
Yeah.
And it can be, it can be color and grooming, but it is that like attention to detail that matters, and that people notice, and that care and love and attention is given because it's part of it. It's part of helping that person who is left here grieving feel that that's more of them.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Last question. Are you afraid to die? Why or why not?
I'm not. I think it's largely due to the fact that, I grew up in that environment, and I was constantly reminded of this 100% is happening. But I mean, it is.
Yeah.
And I absolutely, I know it in my bones.
Yeah.
That there's more. I know it in my bones. And that gives me so much peace and so much comfort. And
how do you know? What, like, is it just an innate feeling, or is it like being around so many funerals and being with your mom when she passed? Was there something that kind of confirmed it for you?
I've lost several people, as we all have. My mom was probably my greatest loss, but I've lost friends and grandparents, and they've all if we're really close, not just a colleague, but if we're really close, they have all shown themselves to me in some way.
Okay.
And that brings me the greatest joy and comfort. And I call it a wink, a sign, whatever you want to call it, whatever your beliefs. To me, it's a knowing. And my mom specifically sends me ladybugs. And that's a more common thing. A lot of people say cardinals, a lot of people say butterflies. My mom sends me ladybugs, and it took me a while to figure that out. It was my birthday, which is in early February, always very cold, kind of a gross time of year. And gosh, this is maybe 7-8 years ago. I treated myself to Starbucks that morning. And I was thinking of my mom, thinking, gosh, I wish I had my mom here to at least tell me happy birthday. I miss her. She was on my mind on my way to Starbucks. I get to Starbucks. I order the thing, get in my car, and I lift it up to take a sip. And there is a ladybug right on the lid. And I'm like, in February, that's weird.
Yeah. That's mom.
And then it kept happening and happening and happening. And it's gotten to the point where it'll show up on my driver's side window. In my office.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll think of her, and a few hours later, this happened just the other day, a few hours later, a little girl went by wearing a ladybug sweater.
Oh God.
And it is so cool.
That is
to
amazing.
have that reminder that there is more.
That is amazing.
And I love that.
That is amazing. Katie, I think you're my new favorite person on this planet. I feel the same
about you.
I know. We've got to go. We're good. We got to go to Starbucks. We got to see ladybugs together.
Yes.
Listeners, I will put links to Larkspur and the documentary and anything else that Katie mentioned. Katie, you are the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You are too.
If you like this episode of Dying to Know More, be sure to give it a like and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode.